Story 1 of 43. Affordable flight options to Europe from Australia in 2026 amid Middle East instability. Affordable flight options to Europe from Australia in 2026 amid Middle East instability. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A business-class return flight from Melbourne to London with Etihad in mid-April to early May costs $4,881, nearly $2,000 cheaper than Emirates Premium Economy for the same route and dates. Economy class fares to Europe via Asia-based carriers, e.g., Air China, Malaysia Airlines, Qantas, Turkish Airlines, are comparable to 2025 prices, with examples like Melbourne-London from $1,295, Air China, or Sydney-Paris from $2,167, Malaysia Airlines. Return business class fares with Qantas, Singapore Airlines, Japan Airlines, ANA, or Turkish Airlines start at $12,000 for any departure in the next 6 months. China-based carriers and Vietnam Airlines offer sub-$10,000 return business class fares to Europe. Flights via the US, e.g., American Airlines, United, are safer but more expensive, with return economy fares from Melbourne-Sydney to London starting at $2,600 in May and $4,000 in July. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 2 of 43. German TV star Collien Fernandes AI porn allegations against ex-husband Christian Ulmen spark national debate on digital violence laws. German TV star Collien Fernandes AI porn allegations against ex-husband Christian Ulmen spark national debate on digital violence laws. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Collien Fernandes accused Christian Ulmen of creating and distributing AI-generated deepfake pornographic images of her via fake social media accounts. Fernandes filed a legal complaint against Ulmen in Spain in 2025, citing stronger legal protections for digital violence there. Ulmen's lawyer Christian Schertz denied the allegations, calling Fernandes' claims fake facts and accusing Der Spiegel of inadmissible coverage. Fernandes told Der Spiegel she discovered hundreds of fake pornographic images of her circulating online, later attributing them to Ulmen. Germany's Justice Minister Stefanie Hubig announced plans to criminalize production distribution of non-consensual deepfake porn with up to 2 years in prison. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Ulmen's lawyer accused Der Spiegel of spreading fake facts based on Fernandes' claims, while Article 2 frames Ulmen's lawyer as denying deepfakes but not outright calling Der Spiegel's reporting false. Article 1 describes the deepfakes as AI-generated pornographic images, while Article 2 clarifies Fernandes' case primarily involves identity abuse, fake profiles, rather than AI deepfakes. Article 1 mentions Fernandes filed a complaint in Spain in 2025, but Article 2 does not specify the exact year beyond recently. This story was covered by The Guardian. Story 3 of 43. Magnitude 7.4 earthquake in Indonesia triggers tsunami warnings and localized damage. Magnitude 7.4 earthquake in Indonesia triggers tsunami warnings and localized damage. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A magnitude 7.4 earthquake struck the Molucca Sea region northeast of Indonesia at 9:48 a.m. AEDST, local time, with an epicenter 127 km west-northwest of Ternate, Indonesia, and a depth of 35 km. The U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, reported aftershocks as high as magnitude 5 following the main quake. Indonesia's meteorology agency, BMKG, recorded tsunami waves of 0.3 meters in West Halmahera and 0.2 meters in Bitung, Indonesia. The U.S. tsunami warning system warned of possible tsunami waves along the coasts of Indonesia, the Philippines, and Malaysia within 1,000 kilometers of the epicenter. Japan's meteorological agency stated no tsunami damage was expected despite slight sea level changes along its coast. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reported one confirmed fatality in Manado from falling rubble, while The Guardian did not mention a confirmed death but described widespread panic and evacuations. ABC stated tsunami waves of 0.3 m in West Halmahera and 0.2 m in Bitung were reported by BMKG, but The Guardian did not specify these exact measurements. ABC mentioned potential evacuation orders in Ternate and Tidore, while The Guardian did not reference these specific locations for evacuation preparations. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Story 4 of 43. Former Home Affairs Secretary Michael Pezzullo's 2023 sacking over secret dealings with lobbyist Scott Briggs. Former Home Affairs Secretary Michael Pezzullo's 2023 sacking over secret dealings with lobbyist Scott Briggs. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Michael Pezzullo was sacked as Home Affairs Secretary in November 2023 after a confidential inquiry found he breached the Australian Public Service Code of Conduct at least 14 times. The inquiry report by former APSC Commissioner Linnell Briggs, no relation to Scott Briggs, was ordered after leaked encrypted messages between Pezzullo and Scott Briggs were exposed in September 2023 by *60 Minutes and *The Age Star. Pezzullo's messages to Scott Briggs included attempts to influence ministerial appointments, e.g., pushing for Peter Dutton to retain Home Affairs portfolio, and disparaging remarks about ministers like George Brandis and senior public servants. Pezzullo failed to declare a conflict of interest when directing a $79,500 government contract to Scott Briggs' lobbying firm DPG Advisory in 2021, admitting his lapse after concerns were raised. The inquiry report was initially suppressed by the government but was released in 2024 after an 18-month Freedom of Information battle by former MP Rex Patrick. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian explicitly states the inquiry did not find Scott Briggs engaged in misconduct, while the SMH and THEJ do not address Briggs' conduct directly or imply innocence. The SMH and THEJ omit any mention of Pezzullo's Order of Australia being revoked in September 2024, which is only reported by The Guardian. The Guardian highlights Pezzullo was retained by the Albanese government until September 2023, while the SMH and THEJ do not specify the exact timeline of his retention post-election. This story was covered by The Guardian, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 5 of 43. Australian government's gambling advertising reforms and public reaction. Australian government's gambling advertising reforms and public reaction. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese announced gambling reforms on the 4th of April, 2026 during a National Press Club address. The Murphy Report, titled You Win Some, You Lose More, was published in June 2023 with 31 recommendations, including a call for a total ban on online gambling advertising. Late Labour MP Peter Murphy chaired the parliamentary inquiry into online gambling reform that produced the Murphy Report. Australians lose approximately $31.5 billion to $32 billion annually on gambling, the highest per capita loss in the world. The reforms include a cap of 3 gambling ads per hour on TV between 6 a.m. and 8:30 p.m., a ban on radio ads during school pickup and drop-off times, and a ban on gambling ads in stadiums and on sports uniforms. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and Guardian both report Albanese called the reforms the most significant reform on gambling that has ever been implemented, but Guardian's David Pocock calls it tragically short and tinkering around the edges. ABC and Guardian both state the reforms do not go far enough, but ABC notes that some inside Labour were quietly celebrating the reforms as a step in the right direction. The Guardian reports that the government will table a formal response to the Murphy Report on the 12th of May, 2026, while ABC does not specify this exact date but mentions it will be when Parliament returns. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Story 6 of 43. Australia's Reserve Bank bans debit credit card surcharges from October 2026, lowering interchange fees and increasing transparency. Australia's Reserve Bank bans debit credit card surcharges from October 2026, lowering interchange fees and increasing transparency. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, will ban surcharges on credit and debit card payments from October 1, 2026, covering MasterCard, Visa, and EFTPOS networks, mentioned in Thij, ABC, Guardian, SBS, Newscomau, SMH. The ban is expected to save consumers approximately $1.6 billion annually in surcharge fees, Thij, ABC, Guardian, SBS, Newscomau, SMH. The RBA will lower interchange fee caps, from 0.8% to 0.3% for domestic-issued consumer credit cards and from 0.2% to 0.16% for debit cards, Thij, ABC, Newscomau, SMH. The RBA estimates businesses will save about $910 million per year from reduced interchange fees, Thij, ABC, Newscomau, SMH. The reforms include increased transparency measures, requiring card networks, EFTPOS, MasterCard, Visa, to publish their fees, ABC, Newscomau, SMH. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian, Article 8, suggests businesses may hike prices by 0.1% as a one-off increase, while the ABC's FAI-GAO implies a broader price rise across goods and services, not just a minor adjustment. The Independent Payments Forum, Brad Kelly, claims all Australians will face higher prices due to the ban, including cash users, but the RBA and Treasurer Chalmers emphasise that the final price on menus will be transparent and surcharges will no longer be hidden. The Guardian, Article 3, states that banks may increase credit card fees or interest rates to offset lost revenue, but this is not explicitly mentioned in Thij or ABC articles as a direct consequence. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, SBS News, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 7 of 43. Columnist Ross Gittins recounts his 44-day ICU stay and near-death heart surgery experience. Columnist Ross Gittins recounts his 44-day ICU stay and near-death heart surgery experience. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Ross Gittins began experiencing uncontrollable shaking during a Danube cruise in October, initially diagnosed as bronchitis by the onboard doctor. Gittins was hospitalized in Budapest before returning to Australia via Vienna, where he insisted on flying home despite hospital advice. Upon returning to Australia, Gittins was taken to a major teaching hospital named after a long-forgotten royal, Prince Alfred Hospital. Gittins suffered an infection that spread from his teeth to his heart, requiring emergency surgery to repair his heart valves. The surgery involved an unidentified flying object procedure, a complex valve reconstruction, lasting 8 hours with 3 surgeons, including one from Germany. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 8 of 43. Climate change threatens extinction of Australia's superb fairy wren within decades. Climate change threatens extinction of Australia's superb fairy wren within decades. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The superb fairy wren is predicted to go extinct within 30 to 40 years due to climate change impacts, based on intermediate and very high emission scenarios. Researchers from Australian National University, ANU, and James Cook University conducted a study tracking superb fairy wrens in Canberra's Botanic Gardens over nearly 30 years of weekly observations. The study found population extinction risk is high within 50 years even under optimistic emission scenarios, with climate models indicating human-induced climate change as the primary driver. The superb fairy wren was voted Australia's favourite bird in 2013 and 2021 Guardian BirdLife Australia polls. The bird's survival is negatively impacted by dry springs, reduced breeding success, and unusually warm winters, hot summers, reduced adult survival. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states the extinction risk is very fast, within the next 30 to 40 years in intermediate and very high emission scenarios, while ABC specifies a narrower range of 2059 to 2062 for extinction under those scenarios. The Guardian implies the study's data is extrapolated to the entire species across Australia, but ABC clarifies the projections are based primarily on the Botanic Gardens in Canberra, with regional variations possible. The Guardian does not mention the 70% mortality rate in Mount Ainsley's 2025 winter, which ABC highlights as a key finding. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 9 of 43. Impact of RBA interchange fee cuts on Qantas frequent flyer points earnings and alternatives. Impact of RBA interchange fee cuts on Qantas frequent flyer points earnings and alternatives. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, slashed interchange fees for credit cards by 63% from 0.8% to 0.3% effective October 1, 2023, following a similar ban on debit credit surcharges. This fee reduction will significantly reduce revenue for card providers, which currently funds airline points programs like Qantas Frequent Flyer. The RBA's 2017 interchange fee reduction led to reduced points earn rates, some by up to 50%, capped sign-up bonuses, and points spread over 2 years for customer retention. Qantas Health Insurance offers a sign-up bonus of 140,000 Qantas points for new customers joining by April 9, 2024, with points awarded based on cover level over 6 months. Woolworths, Big W, and BWS offer everyday rewards points convertible to Qantas at a 2-to-1 ratio, with promotions offering up to 10x points on specific products or spending thresholds. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 10 of 43. US-Iran war escalation with Trump's threats and regional fallout. US-Iran war escalation with Trump's threats and regional fallout. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump threatened to obliterate Iran's electric generating plants, oil wells, and Karg Island if a ceasefire deal is not reached shortly, both sources, April 2024. Iran's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Esmail Baghaei called US peace proposals unrealistic, illogical, and excessive. Guardian, excessive, unrealistic, and irrational. ABC, unrealistic, illogical, and excessive. Iran received a 15-point proposal from the Trump administration via intermediaries after talks on April 10 between foreign ministers of Pakistan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, Guardian and ABC. Thousands of US troops, including 2,500 Marines, have arrived in the Middle East, with additional forces building capacity for potential future operations. ABC, thousands, Guardian, unspecified but referenced. Israel launched missile strikes on Iran's capital Tehran and infrastructure used by Iran-backed Hezbollah in Beirut, ABC and Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian mentions Trump's preference to take the oil in Iran, implying a ground operation, in an interview with the Financial Times, but ABC does not reference this specific statement. The Guardian states Trump's April 6 deadline for Tehran was referenced by the White House, while ABC does not mention this deadline explicitly. The Guardian reports Iran called for volunteers for a Jan-Fada operation, but ABC does not mention this. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 11 of 43. 20-year-old man accused of plotting WA terror attack faces court hearings. 20-year-old man accused of plotting WA terror attack faces court hearings. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jason Joseph Michaels, 20, is accused of plotting a mass casualty terror attack targeting Western Australia Police Headquarters, WA Parliament House, and mosques in Perth. Michaels allegedly wrote in a diary about planning a day of justice and compared his intended attack to the Bondi Beach mass shootings, stating what I want to do to both these groups pales in comparison to today. Police raided Michael's parents' home in Bindoon, north of Perth, in February 2024, and seized a locked diary, 2 guns, 900 rounds of ammunition, and various knives from his bedroom. Michaels allegedly accessed extremist white supremacist ideology online, including manifestos and instruction manuals from declared terrorist organizations, and researched bomb-making materials and 3D printed weapons. Magistrate Belinda Coleman refused bail for Michaels, describing his diary entries as disturbing and not mere ramblings. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC mention Michaels allegedly planned to design body armor or a metal suit, but News Corp Australia does not mention this detail. The Guardian and ABC describe Michaels' diary as disturbing and not just ramblings, while News Corp Australia's prosecutor Kirsten Nelson frames it as big talk with no real intent. The Guardian and News Corp Australia emphasize Michaels' research into explosives and weapons construction, but ABC does not explicitly mention this research beyond general radicalization. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Story 12 of 43. NASA's Artemis II crewed lunar flyby mission and its historic milestones. NASA's Artemis II crewed lunar flyby mission and its historic milestones. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Artemis II mission launched on November 16, 2024, or April 14, 2024 in some sources, but all agree on the timeline of events post-launch, carrying 4 astronauts: Reed Wiseman, Commander, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen, first non-American on a lunar mission. The crew consists of 3 Americans, Wiseman, Glover, Koch, and 1 Canadian, Hansen, marking the first time a non-US citizen has flown to the moon. Christina Koch will be the first woman to fly into cislunar space, and Victor Glover will be the first person of color to do so. The Artemis II mission is a 10-day test flight with no lunar landing, focusing on testing the Orion spacecraft and life support systems for future missions, including Artemis III, 2027, and Artemis IV, 2028. The crew broke the Apollo 13 distance record of 400,171 kilometers, 248,655 miles on flight day 6, reaching a maximum distance of approximately 406,773 kilometers, 252,757 miles from Earth. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC articles do not agree on the exact launch date, with some sources mentioning April 14, 2024, and others November 16, 2024, but all agree on the timeline of events post-launch. The Guardian mentions the Artemis II launch was originally scheduled for February 2024, but ABC articles state the launch was delayed due to technical issues in February 2024, forcing the rocket back to the hangar. The Guardian and ABC articles do not provide a consistent date for the splashdown, with some sources mentioning April 10, 2024, and others April 19, 2024, but all agree on the timeline of events post-launch. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 13 of 43. Angus Taylor's car theft and related political events during fuel crisis. Angus Taylor's car theft and related political events during fuel crisis. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Angus Taylor's car was stolen on March 27 from an address in Canberra's inner south. The stolen vehicle was located in Turner, a North Canberra suburb, later the same day, March 27. ACT policing confirmed the car was taken to an ACT policing facility for forensic examination. The investigation into the car theft remains ongoing as of the reporting date. Taylor was due to attend a coalition press conference at a petrol station on March 27 with Matt Canavan and Bridget McKenzie to discuss fuel excise cuts. But not all outlets told the same story. SMH states Taylor appeared at the petrol station in only a shirt due to the car theft, while Newscomau does not mention the shirt detail or reason for his attire. SMH implies the car theft was the reason for Taylor's lack of jacket, but Newscomau does not provide any explanation for his attire. SMH mentions the car was likely empty and possibly damaged due to low fuel, but Newscomau does not address this detail. This story was covered by news.com.au and Sydney Morning Herald. Story 14 of 43. Kieran Foran's debut as Manly Sea Eagles interim head coach and his first NRL match against the Dolphins. Kieran Foran's debut as Manly Sea Eagles interim head coach and his first NRL match against the Dolphins. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Kieran Foran made his NRL coaching debut as interim head coach of the Manly Warringah Sea Eagles on the 18th of April, 2026 against the Redcliffe Dolphins at Dolphin Stadium. Foran took over the head coaching role after Manly parted ways with Anthony Seibold on the 19th of April, 2024, Friday before the game. Foran is 35 years old and is among the youngest to take charge of an NRL side, with his transition from player to head coach being the fastest in the NRL this century. 9 of Foran's former Sea Eagles teammates remain at Manly from his 2022 season. Foran has vowed to be patient with young half Joey Walsh, allowing him time to develop in the NSW Cup. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by ABC News. Story 15 of 43. Australia faces back-to-back cyclones with Tropical Cyclone Mela threatening far north Queensland weeks after Cyclone Narelle. Australia faces back-to-back cyclones with Tropical Cyclone Mela threatening far north Queensland weeks after Cyclone Narelle. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Tropical Cyclone Mela is a Category 3 system currently located between Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands as of the reporting date. Mela is the 11th named tropical cyclone in the Australian region this season according to the Bureau of Meteorology. Forecasters predict Mela could make landfall in far north Queensland over the weekend, potentially affecting Cape York. Tropical Cyclone Narelle struck 3 Australian states, Queensland, Northern Territory, Western Australia, in late March, becoming the first cyclone to do so in 21 years. Narelle caused widespread evacuations, flooding, and infrastructure damage including power water outages in Exmouth, WA, and gas production pauses at Chevron Woodside facilities. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states Mela is the 11th named cyclone this season, while Guardian does not mention this specific number. News Kamau reports Mela's potential winds at landfall as 95 km/h sustained and 130 km/h gusts, whereas Guardian states Mela could hit as a Category 4 with 160 to 199 km/h sustained winds. News Kamau says Mela is expected to strengthen to Category 4 then weaken to Category 3, while Guardian does not specify this weakening phase explicitly. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Story 16 of 43. Barbie Dream Fest event scandal and fan backlash over underdelivered experiences. Barbie Dream Fest event scandal and fan backlash over underdelivered experiences. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The event was called Barbie Dream Fest and took place in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in 2024. Tickets ranged from $69 day pass to $449, 650 Australian dollars for the Dream Pass, as advertised on BarbieDreamFest.com. Attendees reported receiving only a plastic hairbrush and Barbie-branded hand sanitizer in their swag bags. The life-sized Barbie Dream House was described as a cheap backdrop with a picnic table on fake turf by attendees. The roller rink was a small 20 by 40-foot concrete space with minimal decoration, per attendee descriptions. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reported the day pass was $69 US, while The Guardian reported it as $72, £54 equivalent. ABC stated the Dream Pass was $449 US, while The Guardian stated it was $452.50, £340 equivalent. ABC mentioned the event was created by Mischief Management, which licensed the Barbie brand from Mattel, while The Guardian did not specify licensing details. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 17 of 43. NSW Council tests 4-day workweek to cut costs and improve efficiency. NSW Council tests 4-day workweek to cut costs and improve efficiency. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Murrumbidgee Council in rural NSW is exploring a compressed 4-day workweek, Monday through Thursday, for office, depot, and library staff, with Fridays closed. The proposal involves staff working full weekly hours, 35 to 38 hours, across 4 extended days, maintaining the same 35 hours of weekly customer service through longer daily opening times. General Manager John Scarce is leading the initiative, stating the goal is to improve productivity and reduce costs without raising rates or cutting services. The council estimates annual productivity savings of approximately $1.1 million, primarily from reduced travel time and fuel use for road crews averaging 160 kilometers daily round trips. Essential services, water SOAR, animal control, emergency callouts, childcare, caravan parks, swimming pools, will continue as normal and remain operational on Fridays. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the council is focused on improving productivity and efficiency without reducing services, while ABC emphasizes the model could help attract and retain staff as a competitive advantage. News Kamau mentions the proposal is driven by a need to avoid special rate variations, but ABC does not explicitly address this motivation. News Kamau highlights that unions, ACTU, support shorter weeks for productivity gains, while ABC does not provide union perspectives beyond the general debate. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 18 of 43. Australia's potential gas supply shortfall and government intervention plans via ADGSM. Australia's potential gas supply shortfall and government intervention plans via ADGSM. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Madeleine King, Resources Minister, issued a notice of intent under the Australian Domestic Gas Security Mechanism, ADGSM, on April 2024, targeting July-September 2024 for potential intervention. The ACCC forecasted a gas supply shortfall of 12 petajoules for Q3 2024, July or September, including a 10 petajoule shortfall in July alone. Gas producers have 30 days, until mid-May, to respond to the government's notice before export controls may be applied under ADGSM. The heads of agreement ensuring domestic gas supply expired at the start of 2024, and no new deal has been reached between the government and industry. Madeleine King described the notice as a precautionary measure to ensure domestic supply priority during Middle East supply disruptions, with no current export limits in place. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the notice does not place any limits on gas exports yet, while ABC implies the notice is a formal precursor to export controls if producers fail to comply. News Kamau emphasizes Australia's domestic market is well supplied with no immediate risk, whereas ABC frames the notice as a proactive measure to shore up winter supply despite no current shortage. ABC explicitly ties the 12 PJ shortfall to powering 76,000 homes, a quantification not provided in any WSOMAU's coverage. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 19 of 43. Federal judge dismisses most of Blake Lively's sexual harassment claims against Justin Baldoni in It Ends With Us case. Federal judge dismisses most of Blake Lively's sexual harassment claims against Justin Baldoni in It Ends With Us case. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Judge Lewis Lyman dismissed 10 of the 13 claims in Blake Lively's lawsuit against Justin Baldoni, including sexual harassment, conspiracy, and defamation. Guardian, ABC, Guardian. 3 claims remain: breach of contract, retaliation, and aiding and abetting in retaliation. Guardian, ABC, Guardian. Blake Lively was an independent contractor, not an employee, so her sexual harassment claims under Title VII were dismissed. ABC, Guardian. The case involves the 2024 film It Ends With Us, directed by Justin Baldoni and starring Blake Lively. Guardian, ABC, Guardian. Judge Lyman ruled that Justin Baldoni's conduct was acting in the scene and not sexual harassment, citing the film's intimate nature. Guardian, ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian, Article 1, states Baldoni's lawyer described the defendants as very good people, while The Guardian, Article 3, does not include this exact phrasing but focuses on the legal dismissal. The ABC reports Baldoni's alleged comment "pretty hot" was made after asking Lively to remove her jacket, but The Guardian does not explicitly mention this specific quote in its articles. The Guardian, Article 1, mentions a 152-page opinion by Judge Lyman, while the ABC does not specify the length of the ruling. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 20 of 43. Philippines faces severe economic crisis due to oil price surges from Middle East conflict. Philippines faces severe economic crisis due to oil price surges from Middle East conflict. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Philippines declared a national energy emergency on March 27, 2024, as the first country to do so due to the oil crisis triggered by the Middle East conflict. The Philippines imports nearly all of its crude oil from the Middle East, making it highly vulnerable to global oil price fluctuations. Fuel prices in the Philippines surged by 60%, Guardian, or more than doubled, ABC, since the conflict began, with diesel prices rising from P55 to P130 per litre. Transport workers, including tricycle and jeepney drivers, are the hardest hit, with many earning less than P500 daily, Guardian, and barely covering fuel costs, ABC. President Ferdinand Marcos secured crude oil supplies for domestic processing until June 30, 2024, including a recent shipment from Russia. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports a 60% surge in fuel prices, while ABC states diesel prices more than doubled, from P55 to P130, a 138% increase. The Guardian mentions President Marcos' March 27 announcement about securing crude oil until June 30, but ABC does not reference this specific date or assurance. The Guardian cites P500, $8, as a normal daily earnings for tricycle drivers, while ABC focuses on jeepney drivers' struggles without specifying exact earnings. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 21 of 43. Toddler drowning incident and death in Tara, Queensland. Toddler drowning incident and death in Tara, Queensland. Here's what every outlet agrees on. An 18-month-old boy died at Tara Hospital after being pulled from water at a private property in Tara, Queensland, on Monday around 1 p.m. Emergency services were called to the property in Tara, about 300 to 320 kilometers west of Brisbane, shortly after 1 p.m. on Monday. The toddler was taken to Tara Hospital in a life-threatening condition and died hours later. Police stated the incident was not suspicious. A report will be prepared for the coroner. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports the toddler died in hospital hours later, while Newscomau states the toddler was still in a critical condition at the time of their article. ABC specifies the distance from Brisbane as 300 kilometers, while Newscomau states 320 kilometers. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 22 of 43. Australians celebrate Good Friday with religious services, seafood markets, and cultural events across the country. Australians celebrate Good Friday with religious services, seafood markets, and cultural events across the country. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Thousands gathered at St. Patrick's Cathedral in Sydney for Good Friday church services, including the Stations of the Cross. Sydney fish markets saw large crowds buying seafood for Good Friday lunches, with queues forming as early as 5 a.m. The Sydney fish markets opened at 7 a.m. with about 650 tons of seafood available for sale over the long weekend. Good Friday services across Australia emphasised themes of hope, renewal, and divine light. The Brisbane to Gladstone yacht race began on Good Friday, with 29 boats participating. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reported the Sydney fish market opened at 7 a.m. with staff working since 2 a.m., while Newscomau did not specify the opening time or staff preparations. ABC mentioned the Brisbane to Gladstone yacht race started in dreary, rainy conditions at 11 a.m., but Newscomau did not describe the weather or timing. ABC highlighted the 25-kilometre pilgrimage in Darwin led by Bishop Charles Gauci, while Newscomau did not mention this detail. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 23 of 43. St Kilda AFL player Lance Collard faces tribunal for alleged homophobic slur in VFL match. St Kilda AFL player Lance Collard faces tribunal for alleged homophobic slur in VFL match. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Lance Collard, 21, is facing a disciplinary tribunal hearing next week for an alleged homophobic slur during a VFL match against Frankston, Round 2, last week. Collard was previously banned for 6 matches in 2024 for using a homophobic slur while playing for VFL side Sandringham, affiliated with Street Kilda. Collard pleaded guilty to a high hit on an opponent in the same match, receiving a 3-week ban reduced to 2 weeks. The AFL has investigated the allegation under AFL Rule 2.3a, Conduct Unbecoming. Collard has denied using the homophobic slur according to AFL investigators. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC mentions Collard was banned for 6 matches in 2024 while playing for Sandringham, but Newscomau does not specify the team or year of the previous ban. ABC states the slur was used during a heated exchange in a VFL match against Frankston, while Newscomau does not mention the exchange detail. ABC includes a reference to Adelaide Crow's Isaac Rankine's 4-match ban for a homophobic slur incident, which is not mentioned in Newscomau. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 24 of 43. Victorian Liberal pre-selection battle for Western Metropolitan Upper House seat. Victorian Liberal pre-selection battle for Western Metropolitan Upper House seat. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Moira Deeming was initially ousted from the top spot in the Western Metropolitan region on Sunday the 20th of October, 2024, by Dinesh Gurisetti in a pre-selection vote. Dinesh Gurisetti was deemed ineligible to stand in the November 2024 state election due to a character reference he provided for a friend convicted of sexually assaulting a child. The Victorian Liberal Party executive resolved to hold a fresh pre-selection contest on Monday night, the 21st of October, 2024, after Gurisetti's disqualification. Nominations for the rerun pre-selection opened at 11:10 p.m. on Tuesday the 22nd of October, 2024, and closed at midday on Thursday the 24th of October, 2024, giving candidates 36 hours to submit applications. Moira Deeming and Trung Law did not need to renominate for the rerun pre-selection as they had already applied for the initial ballot. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian Article 1 states the 36-hour nomination window was designed to prevent new candidates from nominating, while Guardian Article 5 describes it as a stitch-up but does not explicitly claim it was intentionally designed to exclude new candidates. Guardian Article 3 claims the timing of Gurisetti's disqualification was diabolical and a political masterstroke, but no other source uses these exact terms or attributes the intent to specific individuals. Guardian Article 5 reports Bobby Lockro's nomination was ruled invalid due to missing referral letters, but Lockro's source claims the party intentionally knocked back his application, implying foul play. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 25 of 43. Melbourne couple charged with slavery and abuse of an Indonesian woman. Melbourne couple charged with slavery and abuse of an Indonesian woman. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Chi Kit Max Chong and Angie Yerling Lau are facing trial in Victoria's County Court for slavery-related offences, both pleading not guilty. The alleged victim was a 61-year-old Indonesian woman who lived with the couple in their Point Cook, Melbourne home from January 2022 until she ran away in October 2022. Mr. Chong is charged with intentionally possessing a slave and 3 counts of common assault. Ms. Lau is accused of assisting or encouraging the slavery offence. The woman was allegedly subjected to beatings, restrictions on food, sleep, and movement, and forced to perform domestic tasks including cooking, cleaning, and massaging Mr. Chong's legs. The woman presented to St. Vincent's Hospital in October 2022 with injuries including a swollen ear, laceration to the foot, swelling to her legs, and indicators of malnutrition. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau reports the woman was 61 years old when she lived with the couple, while ABC does not specify her age. News Kamau states the woman was a pastor at the church Mr. Chong attended in Malaysia, but ABC does not mention her role as a pastor. ABC reports the woman was on a tourist visa when she moved to Australia in 2017, while News Kamau does not mention her visa status. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 26 of 43. Australian aid worker Zomi Francom's death in Gaza and Israel's investigation 2 years later. Australian aid worker Zomi Francom's death in Gaza and Israel's investigation 2 years later. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Lalzomi Zomi Francom, 43, and 6 World Central Kitchen colleagues were killed in an Israeli strike on their humanitarian convoy in Gaza on April 1, 2024. Australia's review by Mark Binskin found a significant breakdown in situational awareness and serious failures in Israeli military practices, but ruled the strike was not intentional. Israel's military advocate general is leading the investigation, which remains ongoing 2 years later with no published findings or conclusions. 2 Israeli officers were dismissed and 3 reprimanded over the strike, which violated IDF rules of engagement according to the IDF itself. Foreign Minister Penny Wong and opposition spokesman Ted O'Brien both called Francom's death a tragedy and demanded transparency and accountability from Israel. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian, sources 1 and 2, reports Israel's ambassador Hillel Newman denied the investigation was shelved and claimed it was ongoing, but the ABC, source 3, quotes Mal Francom saying, "There are no updates, and other high-profile cases have since been closed, but this one remains open," implying stagnation. The Guardian, source 1, states Newman said, "I will check why Binskin was not given access to drone audio," while ABC, source 3, reports Newman explicitly stated, "That's not in my hands. It's in the IDF's hands," avoiding personal accountability. The Guardian, source 2, cites CPJ and Reporters Without Borders with verified numbers of journalist deaths, 86+ in 2025, but Newman in The Guardian, source 1, dismissed such figures as disinformation without evidence. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Story 27 of 43. NSW fuel price crackdown and compliance blitz on service stations. NSW fuel price crackdown and compliance blitz on service stations. Here's what every outlet agrees on. NSW Fair Trading issued 93 penalty notices to service stations for price mismatches between advertised and actual fuel prices on Fuel Check. About 75% of NSW service stations, approximately 1,800, were inspected as part of a compliance blitz in April 2024. Fuel Check daily users surged from 10,000 to 500,000 by late March 2024 due to fuel price concerns. Penalties for non-compliance include on-the-spot fines of $1,100, with court penalties up to $22,000 for individuals and $110,000 for corporations. NSW government injected $2.2 million into Fuel Check to improve data collection and transparency. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and news.com.au mention 24 penalty notices based on consumer reports, but The Guardian states 23 notices were issued to Sydney operators, no direct mention of 24. The Guardian reports no infringement notices were issued for price gouging, while ABC and news.com.au imply some fines were for suspected price exploitation. News.com.au states the federal GST windfall cut added 5.7 cents per litre, while The Guardian only mentions a 32-cent reduction, likely cumulative with excise cut. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Story 28 of 43. International coalition meeting to reopen Strait of Hormuz amid Iran blockade. International coalition meeting to reopen Strait of Hormuz amid Iran blockade. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A virtual meeting of 35 to 40 countries, including Australia, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, Japan, Canada, South Korea, New Zealand, UAE, Nigeria, was held on the 29th of March, 2024 to discuss reopening the Strait of Hormuz, excluding the US. Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong and Deputy PM Richard Marles attended the meeting, with Wong representing Australia virtually. The UK, led by Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper, convened the meeting, with a follow-up military planning session scheduled for the 2nd of April, 2024 to discuss clearing mines and securing the strait post-ceasefire. Iran has effectively blocked the Strait of Hormuz since US-Israel strikes on the 28th of February, 2024, stranding -1,000 or 2,000 ships and 20,000 seafarers, reducing daily vessel traffic from -150 to -25,130. The strait carries -20–25% of global seaborne oil trade, with 10 to 25% of world oil gas supplies passing through pre-conflict. Blockades have caused fuel price spikes and economic disruptions globally. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Macron called military reopening of the strait unrealistic, Article 7, while Article 3 states Macron is pushing for an international escort mission post-ceasefire. Article 3 claims Iran has virtually closed the strait to marine traffic, but Article 2 states Iran's blockade is partial with -130 ships passing daily, versus pre-conflict -150. Article 1, ABC, says Australia's E7 Wedgetail is deployed to the UAE with 85 crew, while Article 8, Newscom, does not specify crew numbers for the Wedgetail deployment. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Story 29 of 43. US military rescue of downed F-15E Strike Eagle crew member in Iran during war. US military rescue of downed F-15E Strike Eagle crew member in Iran during war. Here's what every outlet agrees on. An F-15E Strike Eagle fighter jet was shot down by Iranian forces on Friday, February 2024, in Isfahan province, marking the first US aircraft lost to enemy fire in the ongoing US-Israel war with Iran. Both crew members ejected safely. The pilot was rescued within hours, while the weapons systems officer, a colonel, remained missing and was later found hiding in a mountain crevice at 2,100 meters elevation. The US launched a high-stakes search and rescue operation involving hundreds of Special Operations Forces, including Navy SEAL Team 6, Delta Force, and Army Rangers, coordinated with CIA intelligence. The weapons systems officer was rescued on Saturday night, local time, after a complex operation that included deception tactics, aerial bombardment of Iranian convoys, and a nighttime extraction from the mountains. Two C-130 transport planes involved in the rescue became stuck in sandy terrain at a remote airstrip in Iran and were later destroyed by US forces to prevent capture by Iranian military. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Iran's military claimed to have shot down a USA-10 aircraft in the Gulf, but this is not mentioned in ABC, The Age, or SMH. Iranian state media, via ABC, claims to have shot down a US transport plane and two Black Hawk helicopters during the rescue, while US sources, The Age, SMH, deny this and state the planes were destroyed intentionally by US forces. The Guardian and ABC report that Iran's military claimed the US operation was completely foiled, but US sources, The Age, SMH, described the rescue as a success with no US casualties. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 30 of 43. Australia's fuel stockpile and potential rationing amid Middle East conflict disruptions. Australia's fuel stockpile and potential rationing amid Middle East conflict disruptions. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia's current fuel reserves include 30 days worth of diesel, 39 days worth of petrol, and 30 days worth of jet fuel, ABC Article 1 and Article 2. All fuel shipments to Australia are secured through May 2024, ABC Article 1 and Article 2. The government's internal modelling from mid-March assumed rationing would only be considered if the national stockpile dropped to 10 days' supply, ABC Article 1 and Article 2. Voluntary fuel consumption measures would begin if stockpiles fell to 15 days, ABC Article 1 and Article 2. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announced a four-stage plan to address fuel shortages, with the current stage being keeping Australia moving, ABC Article 1. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the government's modelling assumed diesel would last 6 months in a 20% import reduction scenario, while Article 2 states the same scenario would deplete the stockpile in 6 months. Both sources agree on the duration, but Article 1 clarifies it's a buffer scenario. Article 1 explicitly states the government is not considering rationing at this stage, while Article 2 only states the government is not expected to publicly nominate a clear trigger point for rationing, no direct contradiction, but Article 2 is more ambiguous. Article 1 reports the government's 4-stage plan includes rationing only in the 4th stage, protecting critical services, while Article 2 does not detail the stages but focuses on avoiding rationing entirely. This story was covered by ABC News. Story 31 of 43. U.S. Supreme Court hearing on Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship. U.S. Supreme Court hearing on Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump attended oral arguments at the U.S. Supreme Court on February 21, 2024, becoming the first sitting president to do so. The case challenges whether Trump's executive order can strip birthright citizenship from children born in the U.S. to undocumented immigrants, relying on a reinterpretation of the 14th Amendment's subject to the jurisdiction thereof clause. The Supreme Court heard arguments on February 21, 2024, with a decision expected in June 2024. The ACLU's Cecilia Wang argued for the plaintiffs, including a Honduran asylum seeker, a Taiwanese national, and a Brazilian citizen, whose children would lose citizenship under the order. The Trump administration's Solicitor General, John Sauer, argued that the 14th Amendment citizenship clause presupposes domicile and that birthright citizenship contradicts modern global norms. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the Trump administration's Solicitor General argued the 14th Amendment was intended only for newly freed slaves and their children, while Article 2 frames this as a broader claim about domicile without explicitly limiting it to enslaved people. Article 1 mentions the order would strip citizenship from an estimated 250,000 babies born in the U.S. each year, while Article 2 cites a Migration Policy Institute estimate of 255,000 children annually, a minor discrepancy in rounding. Article 1 does not mention Justice Jackson's deposition question to Sauer, while Article 2 includes it as a key point of skepticism. This story was covered by The Guardian. Story 32 of 43. U.S. government shutdown over DHS funding dispute and immigration enforcement. U.S. government shutdown over DHS funding dispute and immigration enforcement. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS, has been without full funding since mid-February 2024, marking the longest partial shutdown in U.S. history. The Senate passed a DHS funding bill on the 20th of March, 2024 that funds most DHS operations except Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and parts of Customs and Border Protection, CBP. House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune agreed on the 20th of March, 2024 to advance the Senate's DHS funding bill, abandoning a House Republican proposal to fund all DHS for 60 days. Transportation Security Administration, TSA, employees faced weeks without pay during the shutdown, causing security lines at some airports to stretch for hours in February 2024. President Donald Trump signed an executive order on the 19th of March, 2024 to ensure TSA employees received back pay, easing airport delays. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the Senate's DHS funding bill was approved on the 13th of March, 2024, while Article 2 does not specify the exact date but implies it was passed earlier in the timeline, likely the same date. Article 1 mentions the House and Senate are on recess through this week and the next, while Article 2 states they are on recess through next week only, with no mention of an additional week. Article 1 does not explicitly state the House failed to act on the Senate bill during pro forma sessions, whereas Article 2 directly reports the House took no action on the 21st of March, 2024. This story was covered by The Guardian. Story 33 of 43. Eurovision Song Contest launches inaugural Asian edition in Bangkok with 10 participating nations. Eurovision Song Contest launches inaugural Asian edition in Bangkok with 10 participating nations. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The inaugural Eurovision Song Contest Asia will take place in Bangkok, Thailand, with the grand final scheduled for November 14, 2025. 10 countries are confirmed to participate: South Korea, Thailand, the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Cambodia, Laos, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan. Each participating country will select its entry through national finals leading up to the grand final. Martin Green, EBU Director of Eurovision, stated, "This is about evolving Eurovision together with Asia, building something that reflects the voices, identities, and ambitions of the region." The EBU previously announced an Asian contest in 2008 called Our Sound the Asia Pacific Song Contest, but the plans were later abandoned. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states the grand final is on November 14, 2025, while ABC does not specify the year but implies it is the current year, 2025, without confirming the exact date. The Guardian mentions the 2025 Eurovision main event was in Switzerland, May 16, and faced boycotts, but ABC does not mention the 2025 contest location or boycotts in detail. The Guardian highlights tensions between Thailand and Cambodia in July 2025 with 48 deaths, while SBS and ABC do not mention this conflict. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and SBS News. Story 34 of 43. Western Australia faces severe mouse plague threatening agriculture and homes. Western Australia faces severe mouse plague threatening agriculture and homes. Here's what every outlet agrees on. CSIRO Research Officer Steve Henry is warning about unprecedented mouse plague proportions in Western Australia's grain paddocks, ABC News. Mouse numbers in WA are reported at 200 to 8,000 mice per hectare, with some farmers seeing 4,000 burrows per hectare, ABC, 200 to 300, News. 8,000. Farmers in WA's Midwest, Wheatbelt, and Goldfields Esperance regions are affected by the mouse plague, News. Mice are damaging freshly sown seeds, particularly in canola crops, causing significant yield losses, ABC, News. Steve Henry visited WA in 2022 and found the current mouse plague worse than previous years, ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports mouse numbers at 200 to 300 per hectare as cause for concern, while News states some paddocks have 8,000 mice per hectare. ABC does not mention federal approval issues for high-strength bait ZP50, but News highlights this as a major barrier for farmers. News states farmers previously caught 40 mice per day in homes during the last plague, but ABC does not provide this specific comparison. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 35 of 43. Victorian government expands device bans in all schools starting 2027. Victorian government expands device bans in all schools starting 2027. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Victorian public, Catholic, and independent schools will ban internet-enabled smartwatches and wireless headphones from January 2027 as part of expanded device restrictions. Smartphones have been banned in Victorian public schools since 2020, with the policy credited with improving student focus, reducing distractions, and lowering critical incidents involving devices. Education Minister Ben Carroll stated the phone ban was a game changer and that 60% of children aged 7 to 12 use smartwatches, according to ABC and Thij. The new policy will apply to all 233 independent schools in Victoria, with compliance enforced through the Victorian Registration and Qualifications Authority. Exceptions will be made for students using devices for health conditions, as noted in Thij and News. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports mixed parental views on the ban's effectiveness, while Thij and News do not mention any parental opposition beyond general support for the policy. Thiege states the government will introduce draft legislation on Wednesday, but ABC and Newscomau do not specify the exact day of legislative introduction. ABC mentions that Catholic and independent schools requested inclusion in the policy, while Thiege states the government is requiring compliance through the Victorian Registration and Qualifications Authority without mentioning prior requests. This story was covered by ABC News, news.com.au, and The Age. Story 36 of 43. Australia's fuel excise cuts and price relief amid Middle East conflict-driven price spikes. Australia's fuel excise cuts and price relief amid Middle East conflict-driven price spikes. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The federal government halved the fuel excise on petrol and diesel by 26.3 cents per litre effective April 1, 2024, reducing the tax from 52.6 cents to 26.3 cents per litre for 3 months until June 30. State and territory leaders agreed to return an estimated $400 million in GST windfall revenue from higher fuel prices, adding a further 5.7 cents per litre cut, bringing the total reduction to 32 cents per litre until June 30. The average price of unleaded petrol across Australia dropped by 21.2 cents per litre on April 3, 2024, according to ABC and NRMA data, with some cities seeing drops of up to 29 cents, e.g., Adelaide and Darwin. Treasurer Jim Chalmers warned that the full benefit of the excise cut would take somewhere between maybe 1 and 2 weeks to flow through to consumers due to retailers selling existing stock purchased at higher prices. The Middle East conflict, US-Israel war with Iran, has caused Brent crude prices to spike from around $70 to over $115 per barrel, directly impacting Australia's fuel prices, which imports 90% of its fuel from Asia. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC Article 1 states that diesel prices have not yet been passed on as much as unleaded petrol prices, while The Guardian, Article 13, reports that diesel prices fell by 21.3 cents in Adelaide and 11.4 cents on average nationally on April 1, indicating a significant pass-through. Newscomau, Article 10, claims that 8 Sydney fuel stations visited showed business as usual with no significant price drops on April 1, contradicting ABC and Guardian reports of widespread price reductions across capital cities. ABC Article 1 mentions that Victorian and WA data is not currently available due to release methods, but The Guardian, Article 13, does not mention this limitation and provides price data for all capital cities including Perth and Hobart. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Story 37 of 43. Australia's fuel supply crisis amid Middle East conflict and Easter demand surge. Australia's fuel supply crisis amid Middle East conflict and Easter demand surge. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia's fuel reserves as of Easter weekend: 39 days of petrol, 29 days of diesel, and 30 days of jet fuel. ABC, Guardian, News Corp Australia. Over 50 ships carrying fuel were en route to Australia to replenish supplies. Guardian, News Corp Australia, ABC. New South Wales had the highest number of service stations without diesel, with 150 to 182 stations out of diesel. Guardian, News Corp Australia, ABC. Energy Minister Chris Bowen confirmed fuel supplies were secured well into May with no cancellations of contracted shipments. ABC, News Corp Australia. Viva Energy reported a 30% increase in diesel demand compared to the same period last year. ABC, News Corp Australia. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reported 150 NSW stations were without diesel on Easter Saturday, while ABC stated 182 stations were out of diesel on Good Friday, with 150 on Saturday. News Corp Australia stated 184 stations in NSW were out of fuel on Thursday, while The Guardian reported 182 on Friday, no Thursday figure provided. ABC mentioned 36 stations in NSW were completely out of fuel, not just diesel, on Easter Saturday, but this detail was not confirmed in Guardian or News Corp Australia articles. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Story 38 of 43. Essendon AFL Club's 17-match losing streak and coach Brad Scott's response. Essendon AFL Club's 17-match losing streak and coach Brad Scott's response. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Essendon is on a 17-match losing streak in the AFL, dating back to May 2023, ABC. Article 1 mentions 16-match streak but clarifies it extends to 17 in Article 2. Brad Scott is the coach of Essendon and denies the club is in a rebuild phase, stating the squad has changed significantly over 3 years, 39 players turned over. Essendon faces the Western Bulldogs at Docklands Stadium on Sunday, Article 1, and later face Melbourne Demons at Adelaide Oval on Saturday, Article 2. Nate Caddy, Essendon, is unavailable due to a concussion sustained in the loss to North Melbourne, Article 1. Adelaide Crows recall veteran forward Taylor Walker for the match against Fremantle, Article 1. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Essendon is on a 16-match losing streak, while Article 2 clarifies it is a 17-match losing streak. Article 1 does not mention Essendon's 0-4 start, while Article 2 explicitly states Essendon lost the opening 4 matches of the season. This story was covered by ABC News. Story 39 of 43. Western Australia invokes emergency fuel supply powers amid regional shortages. Western Australia invokes emergency fuel supply powers amid regional shortages. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Western Australian Premier Roger Cook activated emergency powers under the Fuel, Energy and Power Resources Act 1972 on Wednesday, April 10, 2024, to force fuel suppliers to disclose stock levels and distribution details. 6 major fuel companies were initially contacted by Premier Cook via letter, but only 3 of them voluntarily provided sensitive supply chain information. The emergency powers allow WA to compel transparency in fuel supply chains, specifically targeting stock volumes, distribution points, and delivery timetables. Energy Minister Amberjade Sanderson stated that penalties for non-compliance could reach up to $100,000 per day for corporations and $10,000 per day for individuals. The government's goal is to allocate fuel to high-need areas, particularly agricultural and mining regions in regional WA. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the emergency powers are completely different from COVID-19 measures, while ABC clarifies the 1972 Act is distinct from the broader COVID Emergency Management Act but does not claim it is unrelated. News Kamau does not mention the 1,600% stockpiling case in Goldfields Esperance, which ABC explicitly reports. ABC reports the emergency orders will take effect on April 10, 2024, while News Kamau does not specify the exact activation date beyond Wednesday. This story was covered by ABC News, news.com.au, and SBS News. Story 40 of 43. Australia's fuel supply crisis amid Middle East conflict and global shipping disruptions. Australia's fuel supply crisis amid Middle East conflict and global shipping disruptions. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 53 to 55 ships carrying crude oil and refined fuels are scheduled to arrive in Australia in April, with cargoes originating from the United States, South America, Africa, and Asia, Thij, ABC, SMH. Energy Minister Chris Bowen reported 410 service stations across Australia were without diesel and 193 without petrol as of late April, Thij, ABC. Australia's fuel demand is approximately 4.5 billion litres per month, ABC. The federal government has underwritten the purchase of spot fuel cargoes via Export Finance Australia to mitigate risks for smaller importers, Thij. The Albanese government announced a 32-cent per litre reduction in fuel excise until June 30, using revenue from a 26.3-cent cut, ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reported 145 stations without unleaded petrol, while Thij and SMH reported 193, ABC discrepancy. ABC stated 410 stations were without diesel, but Thij and SMH did not specify regional breakdowns beyond Bowen's general statement, potential inconsistency in focus. ABC highlighted that 6 out of 81 scheduled tankers were cancelled deferred, while Thij and SMH did not mention this specific cancellation rate, ABC's additional detail. This story was covered by ABC News, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 41 of 43. Sydney gym shooting. 3 men charged in daylight assault with firearms. Sydney gym shooting. 3 men charged in daylight assault with firearms. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A shooting occurred outside a gym on Steer Road, Gregory Hills, Sydney's southwest at 8:30 a.m. on December 5, 2025. 2 masked men fired 12 shots at a 48-year-old man outside the gym. He escaped uninjured. The shooters fled in a red Range Rover SUV with cloned number plates, which was found abandoned in bushland near Macquarie Grove Road, Cobbitty. Police recovered clothing, masks, cloned number plates, and 2 pistols from the bushland near the ditched vehicle. A 40-year-old man was charged with shooting with intent to murder and knowingly directing a criminal group, arrested in Parramatta. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau does not mention the alleged target's name, Stephen Halliby, or his criminal history, which ABC reports. ABC states the 32-year-old was charged with contribute criminal activity, while News Kamau does not include this charge. News Kamau does not specify the exact time of the 32-year-old's arrest, 6:10 a.m., as ABC does. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 42 of 43. American journalist Shelley Kittleson kidnapped in Baghdad by Iranian-backed militia group. American journalist Shelley Kittleson kidnapped in Baghdad by Iranian-backed militia group. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Shelley Kittleson, a 49-year-old American freelance journalist based in Rome, was kidnapped in Baghdad on Tuesday. Kittleson had been reporting for Al Monitor and had extensive experience covering Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Iraqi authorities arrested 1 suspect with ties to the Iranian-backed militia group Kataib Hezbollah after a vehicle chase. The suspect's vehicle overturned during the escape attempt, and authorities seized it as evidence. The U.S. State Department confirmed Kittleson had been warned of threats prior to the abduction. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC mention the U.S. State Department's warning to Kittleson, but News Kamau attributes the warning to Trump administration sources without direct State Department confirmation. The Guardian and ABC report the suspect's vehicle overturned during escape, but News Kamau does not specify the vehicle's condition. The Guardian and ABC state Kittleson was not in the seized vehicle, while News Kamau does not clarify this detail. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Story 43 of 43. Queensland Rail industrial action disrupts train services amid bargaining disputes. Queensland Rail industrial action disrupts train services amid bargaining disputes. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Queensland Rail cancelled all train services between Darra and Rosewood, Ipswich Line, and Central and Cleveland on April 1 due to industrial action. The Rail, Tram and Bus Union, RTBU, Queensland President Steph White announced 24-hour industrial action by train control members starting 12 a.m. April 1, targeting coal and mineral trains, not passenger services. Queensland Rail and unions have been negotiating enterprise bargaining agreements since January, covering approximately 5,600 rail workers. Planned track closures for critical works, including Cross River Rail, will disrupt services from April 3 to April 26 across multiple corridors, Sunshine Coast, Caboolture, Redcliffe, etc. Queensland Rail Chief Executive Kat Stapleton apologised to commuters and urged unions to abandon industrial action, citing over 30 protected industrial action notices received. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Queensland Rail did not tell workers not to attend work during industrial action, but RTBU President Steph White claims QR told workers not to turn up to work. News Kamau claims RTBU walked off the job on Wednesday, while ABC describes RTBU members as ready to do their jobs but prevented by QR government. ABC reports ETU members will not repair unplanned faults unless there is a safety risk, but Newscomau does not mention ETU's role in Thursday's potential disruptions. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au.